Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural episode of Church Hurts. And the one show that's going to really take a look at our spirituality in depth, examining what's working, what's not, and what can we do about it. With the one man who's spent a lifetime trying to answer all those questions, John Bash. Hey, John.
Hey, Paul. It's good to be here as we look at the good, the bad, and the ugly about church, religion, and spirituality. How's that for a challenge?
That's something we're not going to do in one episode, that's for sure. That's a journey we're on here. You've been on this journey for a while. Tell us who John is.
You know, I've been a church pastor. I'm one of those guys that people complain about, you know. When you talk about church hurts, people are going to start talking about the ministers, the pastors, the priests, right?
Right.
So I was one of those guys for a long time and started churches and pastored big ones and little ones, and then went on and worked with churches outside helping them raise money. So that really gets some more controversy into the equation, doesn't it?
Exactly. Money in church. We don't need money in church. It just happens here.
Let's add some politics. And we're going to do that today, Paul. A crazy beginning. Imagine we're going to start looking at issues about church by looking at somebody who doesn't even live in America.
And from somebody who grew up in a place where there were no churches, where they went so far under communist rule to say church, that's just the opiate of the masses. We don't need that nonsense here, and banned them or limited them severely. Who's your guest? Introduce your guest.
You know, I think you need to meet Teodora. I mean, what a treat to have you here. For an American,
she's nodding, so she must agree with that here. She's nodding that she's...
Only her second time in America, and the last time was 20 years ago in Brooklyn, New York. So you can imagine what's Southern
the
California.
Two extremes, yeah, right.
Yeah. So, Teodora, to the American audience, I think they're a bit like me. They even struggle a bit with your name because it's foreign to us. Teodora.
Yes, it's kind of Greek name.
A Greek name.
And what's your last name? You said Teodora.
Teodora Papazi.
Papazi.
Also a Greek name.
That sounds Greek. And that accent to me sounds kind of. I'm kind of a student of accents. I don't know what a Romanian accent's supposed to sound like, but it does. It sounds more Greek to me.
Let's leave that one where it goes. It sounds Greek to me.
It's all Greek to me.
Let's move on to the question for you to begin, because it's going to take us a little bit to get to the church spiritual side of this.
Right.
We need to put Romania in context. When I was there for half of a year, a couple years ago, the first question people had for me was, why Romania? And after I got done dodging that question, as I will do right now, the second question was, where is Romania?
Yeah.
Could you kind of give us the basic introduction, Teodora, to where's Romania?
Well, Romania is in the eastern part of Europe. We have neighbors like Ukraine, Bulgaria, Black Sea.
Russia?
Russia is after Ukraine. Moldova, if you know where Moldova is. Okay, on the other side.
Somebody's got to tell me about Moldova. I always look on a map and I see the country of Moldova, and I have no idea who the Moldovans are, what the language is, or anything.
It's Romanian.
Is it?
It was a part of the big Romania. We lost it. I don't want to say it and be a mistake. I don't know exactly when we lost it.
but because I thought there was always a contention of the border with Romania, even when it was the USSR, when it contained the Ukraine and Russia.
Yes.
Then that part broke away.
That part was part of the USSR.
Right, and then the border, so that border area, and I thought it had something to do with Moldavia.
Now, Paul, your job is to keep us on track.
Not to take us down the rabbit hole.
You are taking us off. I was thinking ahead of time for the show.
You're absolutely right.
How do we really get to where we need to get to? So I'm going to jump on another track a little bit, because I could have introduced you as the head of the Communist Party, because when you were in high school, you were the head of the Communist Party in high school. What was the position called?
Oh, dear. I don't know if we had a position, but I was responsible with what happened in the political way in a week, and I had to read all the papers and come into the classroom and explain to my colleagues what is all about.
So really, it kind of is like being the teacher's pet because you got it because you were the best student in the class, right?
One of them, yes.
Okay, and so
We were a good class.
in any case, part of that growing up in this time, um, basically Romania, which to us, for me, I just looked at Eastern Europe and I look at communism and I lumped it all together, and it really took some time in Romania to realize that for you guys, for people in the West to be lumping you in with the Soviet Union and with communism in general, we must just feel so ignorant. I mean, from your perspective, explain Romania compared to the USSR and communism real quickly.
Well, we are never part of the USSR. We were its neighbor, and we really didn't like the Russians, but the political people have to because we were under the rule of the Iron Curtain.
So you were under the Iron Curtain, but you were one of those
Separate, independent country.
separate.
Nothing to do.
That means Eastern Bloc, not
Eastern
USSR.
Bloc, yes.
And so in any case, you just grew up in that environment. You didn't know anything different.
No, it was how you were born and where you lived, and this is what it was. And for a time, it was okay.
When did it become communist? This is after World War II, so like 46, 47?
In 54.
Oh, 54, okay.
1954.
So, and so from your whole life, you were in the communist,
In
but
the
your parents
communist.
weren't, or your grandparents
Yes.
weren't.
My grandparents lived a life under the kings, and it was fine. It was good. They had their own land, their own restaurant. After the communists came, they took away the land and the restaurants or whatever stores they have.
So this is part of the picture that we had of when communists came in. People lost their property, they lost their homes, they lost
They were
everything.
locked. Some of them were sent to prison, especially intellectual people, academic people, priests, students, even normal people, but who had a strong voice.
I had an opinion.
Yes, they have an opinion.
Yeah, it is I think particularly interesting for us to picture that prior to all this, though, Romania is one of those countries that we get lost in when it comes to the royalty of Europe. And in fact, just to go back a little bit, because you really, to connect the United States to Romania, the last major event that I can picture, at least and put on a calendar at all, is when you had a very great queen. And she was a very popular figure in Romania. And so tell us a little bit about her, because she came to America and was quite a hit in, 1920 or something?
Yes, Queen Mary. She was a good advocate for Romania. She came even in America and all Europe. She was related to the Queen of England, being the niece of Queen Victoria, and the cousin of the Tsar of Russia. They are all related.
Yeah, we don't want to get into European royalty, except to say it's fascinating to imagine that here's this woman who is a nephew of Queen Victoria, who had determined she wanted all of her offspring to marry.
A niece, you said nephew.
a niece.
Niece, yeah, niece.
Yeah, a
right.
niece, not a nephew. That would get into modern issues.
That would, exactly. Gender change issues.
We
Are
were-
right.
But going from that kind of a royalty, and as you look back throughout the history of Romania, and we need to move beyond this because we take forever.
Yes.
But
I got to interject one more thing, though, because I'm going to show off my one little bit of knowledge about Romania. Romanian is a language that's related to French and Spanish and Italian because it was a Roman colony, which is, I believe, why it's called Romania.
Well, this is something that
you could go off on forever.
yeah, but so it's not as
because
far
it is
off
a
as we think it.
Latin language, but we were under the Romans only for 200 years and only a part of Romania, not in the south.
Okay.
And there are people talking articles that Romanian language was before
My only point
Romans.
simply being that we think of Romania as far off and far away and far different than us, and there are more similarities than you would think, right?
Yes.
And let me just put an exclamation
It's
mark.
80% Latin language
So you're talking about really, it's the only Romance language in Eastern
in the
Europe,
eastern
Exactly,
part. Yes,
right.
we are
And the-
surrounded by Slavics.
Right.
and the debate with Romanians is they say their language preceded Latin.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's some of that's kind of culture way beyond for us who in my lifetime celebrated the bicentennial. You guys deal with history, and I can't imagine what history was like in high school when you have thousands of
Oh,
years.
it was hard to remember all the names, all the years, all the things that it happened.
So can I ask
And
one more question? So you're growing as a kid in the communist
Yes.
country. You're excelling under this system. Did you sense, or from any of your older relatives, a loss, a lack of religion, or was it just that's just the way it is? Because you obviously weren't going to church, I would think, and there was no religious study under a communist rule.
we didn't have studies, but by luck, we lived near a church. Our fence was common with the backyard of the church, and my best friend's grandfather was a priest there. So we went there to clean the church, to make it look good when it was a holiday, religious holiday. Otherwise, we were not going to the church, not with family, not on Sundays. It was something banned in Romania to go there.
Right.
So let's leap into that. Paul jumped right exactly where I was going to go. You had the contradiction of living in a country that now under communist rule, as you were born and grew up, officially was an atheist country. And yet, on the other hand, one time I asked you, I was trying to find out your personal beliefs, and you responded, it felt like incredulously to me. You said, but I'm Romanian. And by that you meant that you were Orthodox. So,
Yes.
so here you got this, it's illegal politically, in a sense we're atheists officially. On the other hand, I'm Romanian, so obviously I'm Orthodox. Explain a little bit of that contradiction.
We kept to ourselves our religion, our beliefs. We didn't talk about them because we have another institution that was looking and hurting us. And they have people everywhere. The secret police was everywhere. And you kept to yourself. But we didn't lose our religion into the family.
So there was a private believing, and for some people, they still were able to go to the church. And you go around in Romania, and there were some churches that were actually destroyed by the ruler Ceausescu.
Yes.
Right?
He destroyed only in Bucharest 21 churches. Some of them were very old, very important for the history of Romania. They couldn't be saved, but it was a very brave engineer, Chescu, it's a hard name, that saved some of them by moving them on wheels. And it was a good invention at the time, and he saved a few, 11, I think.
And so I experienced, as I went around, I still saw a lot of churches, and yet it seemed that they were pretty empty. It's a lot like going to many churches in urban centers of America that are large, that were churches built for thousands, that would have tens. And it seemed that way in Romania too. Your restaurant is right across the street from actually a cathedral.
Yes.
An Orthodox cathedral, and really very few people seem to be going in and out of that church.
Yes, because we grew up with this for 50 years, our parents, us, even children, young children, and we just used the church because of the fear of something bad to happen to us, so we went there only for baptizing children, burials, and commemorating our deaths. This is something that
So
we
did
do
the
for 7
church
years.
hurt anyone? I mean, did people feel like this? There must have been people. Communism in general said churches, the opiate of the masses. Forget it. We don't need all this stuff here. We're a modern world. And I think what's interesting about this conversation, you lived where we're headed. which is a churchless state. Now, it was forbidden there. It's not forbidden here, but in Western Europe and in America, church attendance continues to plummet. More and more people end up saying, who cares? Did you care? Did you miss anything? Did you feel a loss, or was it just not even, you don't know what you don't have?
You're right. I didn't know what I have because growing up, it was what you got. It was something that everybody did.
And that something that everybody did was kind of, they had that church in the history of their family. At the same time, they're experiencing, no, but we know the secret police, I guess we could just call them, the security there, but really
Yes.
those who are spying on you, who aren't in uniform, who have political influence that affects your jobs.
And some priests were
Oh, jeez, really?
cooperating with them, so
Wow.
you didn't go there for your confessions because you knew.
They would tell what you told them? Oh my goodness.
Yes, you are not going to confess. Just do your prayers and
Forgive me, Father, I thought bad of the communist society here. Whoops, all of a sudden.
oops, no.
And that's actually the I think the pinnacle of what I wanted to get in this first show together, is when we think about how church hurts in our lives. Is our listeners, almost all of them have stories of ways that they felt let down by the church, were disappointed, discouraged, many of whom just quit going. In Romania, the reason, it seems, for underlying just virtually everybody in the country, a general distrust, is because the church hurt them in such a way of a true betrayal, where something like confession, and we need to realize we're talking about the Orthodox Church and don't need to go down, or don't have time to go down that side road of the difference between Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy compared to Protestantism. But enough to say you still had confession, and the priest in the church was to be a sacred place. Confession of all things, a way for people to let out things that they had done, something very important that Jesus had told people to do. The priest was to personify that safe place where you could do it, and took the most sacred of things and violated.
Yes, we felt betrayed then, and we are feeling betrayed even now, because church is not what it is supposed to be. Even now, there are priests that now the priests are paid by the state. So, being so, most of them are doing what the ruling party is asking them to. So instead of preaching the God's saying, or how do you say, it's they are speaking about how to vote, what to do, and this is not what church should be.
Now, why are they paid? It's not a communist society. When did communism fall? After the fall of the Soviet
Yes,
Union?
1989, it was the big fall in all
Okay,
Europe.
and so ostensibly it's a parliamentary, a democracy. Is it in fact a democracy, or is it one of these strongman rule? I don't know enough
No,
about
it is a democracy, so to speak.
but there is a power in place. And why would the state pay the religious? Why would they pay
Because
the priests?
it's a way to rule the people easily, because they know religion is an important part for Romanians, and they go to church now. They are free. They think they are free to go now to the church, and they listen to their priests, especially in the small villages. And they are convinced by the priest how to vote. This is how you keep them close to the political party that's ruling at the time.
See if I'm right on this. Here's what I ended up seeing, because I went over very open. I talked to you about the fact I was really curious about how Orthodoxy would manifest itself in the lives of people. And what I saw was that I first had to really turn off my separation of church and state mindset, which is built in Paul to Americans, I
Yeah,
think so
right.
deeply.
Fundamental principle, yeah.
And to go to realize so many places, so many countries in the world, that simply does not exist. In fact, the vast majority, it does not exist. We're the weird ones that, in a sense, got it in our blood if we're real Americans with the separation of church and state. We even get it wrong, but we at least get it. Oh, the state's not supposed to be telling the church how to behave, and vice versa. And so you go over there and to many other countries, not just countries, former communist countries and so forth, and not just Orthodox churches. The clergy are paid for by the state, and that sets up a disappointment for hurt, I think, really quickly. And so I met a number of people there. When I tried to talk to them about God, they couldn't, because they couldn't separate the notion of Jesus or God or the Bible, those kind of issues, from the church. They just wanted to talk about the church. That's real critical for control, even if it's the socialism of today.
Well, we don't approve what the priests are doing now because they have private businesses, they have hotels, they have
The priests have
yes,
hotels.
the priests have restaurants, they have their own businesses, radio stations, and so on. And the state is paying them. We go there and we pay for each service that the priests are doing. We don't receive any receipt, and
How do you pay? Do you have to pay an
cash, of course.
So, like going to a movie theater, you got to buy a ticket. You got to pay when you walk in the door.
No, when you walk in, it is a box there that you can put money to
Right.
sustain that church, but then you pay for every service that we have from the priest coming to our homes when it's Easter, Christmas, and St. John.
Or funerals, weddings. Yeah,
Yes,
some of that
for
same
that
thing.
too.
yeah,
But
right.
at the home, when they are coming, and imagine a city with 50,000, 2 million people living there, coming into each home to bless that home. They are coming with that holy water and that basil
Right.
bunch, okay?
And they're expecting a bunch of money to do that.
Yes, and you
right.
do that. So you don't receive anything, and those money goes into their pockets. Priests there are driving Mercedes and other fancy cars,
Well, there's
new ones.
some of that going on in America. Maybe not certainly in John's neck of the woods. I'm more the Irish Catholic neck of the woods here, but there's definitely Protestants out there benefiting
We do have.
televangels and stuff here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could get down that side road. But I tell you, you have really helped us, Teodora. I think even in this short time, maybe get a little bit more empathy to get outside of ourselves for a second. When we think about church hurts, the title of what we're doing is Church Hurts and there's an and about this that we're going to be able to get to, because so far we're just kind of putting some fuel on the fire
Right.
to our cynicism.
Right.
But there's more to the story, and you're part of that, and your friends are part of that. Because in spite of all of those things, where you really saw corruption at a deep level, and it continues, you were able to turn out into who you are and have the faith that you have, and friends who challenge and talk about things in a wonderful way. But we're going to get into that next time.
Because let me just say it, we have a saying there: you don't have to do what the priest is doing, just what the priest is saying. So what he says in the church is what you have to follow if he's doing.
Follow the word, not
Follow
the way
the
of the
word.
man here,
Yes.
right? Follow the
Exactly.
idea, not the people. Right.
Yes.
Follow what I say, not what I do. And so I just want to thank you so much, and look forward to our next session.
Thank you for having me here.
Well, there you have it, as we're going to go down and explore our common concerns and questions about where we all headed in the world of spirituality. Because we know church hurts. And right here in Orange County's only community radio station, octalkradio.net. We've all heard it said, church hurts. But you have to ask yourself, okay, and? That's what we're going to talk about in this show and each and every week. Church hurts, and with the man who's going to give you some ideas and some hope, John Bash. Hey, John.
Hey, Paul. What a treat to launch into another show with Teodora Papazi. Do you remember Teodora, Paul?
I do, and we only got halfway through her story the last time here. She came from a communist country, grew up without any religion, in a world that we can't even imagine, no church, and then found some sort of spirituality or faith, and we're going to talk about that.
Well, as I remember it, you kind of had religion because you had a church in your backyard and you helped clean it. as a
Clandestine
kid,
church, yeah, right.
right?
Yes.
Secret church.
After each religious holiday, there were stains of melted candles. So we have to clean that and put the rugs in place and chairs, and it was fun.
I was just saying that does not sound like fun.
Oh, it was. For us, it was.
And I'm trying to
We got
picture.
to sing in the choir there.
Oh, did you? I didn't know.
Well, not like every Sunday or something, when that religious holidays were.
So was church just a memory kept alive by those older, or did it mean something to
By
you?
our grandparents.
Yeah, did it mean anything? Was it just a superstition? I got to cross myself and I got to touch the icon and do all these things, or did it mean anything?
As a child, it didn't mean anything. It was something that our grandparents taught us, and we were just doing it. Getting older, try to be something else.
And so we had discussed a bit, officially though, because you were under communist rule at the time, it really wasn't approved. And
No.
yet for many of you, you still had a surface connection to the church, as you did.
Yes, and we kept it in our souls, but it's a superstition too. They are not to deny whatever is religion. You better accept it, but you do it in your own soul, mind. You don't say it loud.
I want to talk about that in a little bit, but first I want to get a story of kind of connecting you and encourage people to go back and listen to the first show with you. But there came a time in your life, speed through, you've gotten through childhood, you somehow missed college, even though they encouraged you to go and they told you exactly where to go, and then they told you what job you would go to since you didn't. But then you ended up married and you had a child, and you were married to a rather rebellious man. Would that be a good summary?
Yes.
And he wasn't real pleased with living under communism and the rules, and decided that he wanted to
Fled.
get out of the country, right?
Yes, he tried it 3 times before we met, and once after we met, and he succeeded.
Okay, so here you married to this man that the authorities don't approve of very much, and you were a lady of some distinction, or known to be a good lady in town, and a good businesswoman at this point, I assume.
No, I wasn't a businesswoman.
You weren't yet?
Not
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
Just finished high school. But my father was. And
But you told us you were a good communist. You were.
I was.
Yeah.
And my father was too. Otherwise, he couldn't have a good job.
Yeah.
Your father in the Communist Party, in fact, was the head of the
Communist
union.
Party in that village, and the president of the
Like labor
stores.
union or something? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
the union of some sort, right?
stores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Retail stores.
Retail stores, okay.
Retail stores. Yeah.
All right. So get to the here's the husband. He has you. He has a child, and he says, "Yeah, but I want to get out of here." How did that happen?
It happened by swimming across Danube at the border with Yugoslavia, and it was very hard. He trained himself for a year to get the strength to swim in very fast way.
Correct.
And what are you doing the whole time? Oh, you helping him train so he can leave you?
I was there with the baby and just let him do it. Yes, we live on the Danube River, but not on the side that he chose.
So this is,
flat.
it just seems rather hard. I'm sure people are shaking their heads. So, honey, I gotta go. okay, I'll help you. And the day comes, let's take the baby down. Wave goodbye. There goes Daddy. He's swimming
Yes,
across the river.
it was a very hard period for me, but I was young and I didn't really understood what it will happen and how it's gonna be.
Did he say he was going to come back for you? Was there
No,
plans for you to
I
join
knew he.
him?
It was something to reunite families.
A program that maybe
program,
someday,
yes.
if he could get out, then maybe he could bring you over or
Yes,
something. Right?
yes. But we didn't know anything in the beginning because we didn't know where he will end up, free or in prison.
And where did he end up?
Free at this time.
But one more thing before we get to him succeeding in this crazy swim across the Danube. He had to prepare because when you get to the other side, for example, he had to have money and he couldn't take Romanian currency, so he was saving up dollars.
Dollars, yes. He hid
Hid,
them
right.
in the sole of the shoe, and then he had a good watch. But by the time he prepared himself to enter the water, before the water they have very dried branches, so the soldiers will hear any noise. Being afraid, he took the money out, put them near a pole, and when he decided to enter the water, he forgot the money. So he fled without the money and just that watch. And it was a very hard period for him because he had to travel by pass Yugoslavia and all Yugoslavia.
Which
and,
was communist as well.
yes, and he was afraid to be caught there, so had to travel by train up in the
Mountains?
no
Oh, up above the train?
not
Yeah.
about the train, in between it is a empty space
Oh,
in the toilet, and then you go up in a little space there.
well, kind of the attic of the train.
Yeah.
Yes,
I didn't know
and-
there was an attic in a train here.
It is something there, yes.
And he hid there, and he got. Where did he get to? Austria or
To the border with Greece.
with Greece?
he
Oh,
went.
so he went that way. Okay, south.
Yes, he went down, and he went to Greece by pretending that he's fishing. So he didn't know when he passed Yugoslavia and he was into the Greek territory.
I'm sorry, I didn't know where I was. So
Yeah.
now, how did he communicate back? He can't call you on a cell phone and say, "Honey, I'm here."
We didn't have a phone call. Well, first thing, he sent a postcard to the police station saying, "Hello from Greece. I'm free." And then he called us.
That's
but
sort
we
of a
knew,
defiant move. Here, up yours. I'm in Greece. I made it.
Yes.
Yeah.
we knew our phone will be listened to all the time, so we didn't say anything important. Just
Wouldn't you be
in fact-
punished though? Here you are, a good member of the Communist
I
Party. Your
was,
father's a good
I
member of
was,
the Communist Party, and somebody disgraces the Communist Party by
Yeah, my father was taken out of his
job.
From the president, he became a worker with no skills, the lowest part. He was taken out of the Communist Party in a big meeting and said that he wasn't good enough to raise his daughter because I asked for following him. I was taken out of the Young Union of Communists.
Because you should have
People?
reported him. You should have. First of all, you should have never associated with somebody like this. And if you did, you certainly shouldn't have helped him. And you certainly should have reported him somewhere along the way. This was just a disgrace
was
that you let
bad
this happen, right?
From
Yeah.
my part too, yes.
Yeah.
So then we don't have time, but basically via Germany and ultimately you got
Italy,
to
yes, we got to Canada.
Got to Canada, and for 10 years, right? 10
11,
years,
okay.
11 years in Canada, and you decided to make a living. You started a restaurant.
Yes, he bought a restaurant after 2 months there. Of course, not with cash all the money, but we started that. And I was crying because I said, I don't know anything about this. And he said, you learn. And I did learn. In 1 month, I learned everything there, and even better than the man that was before.
So you got out,
So-
reunited, and got to Canada, and started a new career in a
Yes.
restaurant.
Yes.
How do you get back to Yugoslavia? How do you get back to Romania?
I was allowed to leave Romania legally. And he waited until the revolution to go back.
Ah, okay. So once communism fell, then it was
Yes,
everything
then
was okay.
he was allowed. He didn't have the Romanian citizenship. He had only Canadian citizenship. So,
And why go back? Romania hasn't been kind to him. Why go back?
oh, he missed family, friends, and the life there. I think for him it was harder in Canada, than it was for me.
And are you two still together? Did that work out?
No, we divorced.
And was that due to the pressure of coming back and or changes in the world? I mean, you don't have to give us a deep detail,
No,
but
it was because of he's changed into kind of wealthy man coming back from Canada, and all the girls were there for him.
suddenly,
So let's go.
I see.
Let's take a little different direction.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I want to get to you got to the place that you solo are running this restaurant that's really, I mean, I call you a restaurateur because it's probably really the most successful restaurant in Kalaresh, which for our listeners, if they read it, it would look at Kalarasi, is the way we would pronounce it, but it's Kalaresh. And you, though, through ups and downs, I mean, this place has thrived. And what's been, what's it been like kind of building where like your life now, you have what's 15 to 25 people who are depending on you for their wages and employment. What's that like in this socialist country that's kind of, but they would call themselves a democracy, is that correct?
They call it, yes. Well, they have very high taxes, and it's hard to keep a small business. It's not a big business where you can do big events, like over 100 people. You cannot do weddings or baptizing parties. So we rely on people that are coming there every day. So we have to be good for them and be there with new dishes and ideas. And in a way, it was hard in the beginning because of the lack of the ingredients, and then every year rules changed, taxes changed, and they are so high. We kind of rely on the next month to meet the end.
Okay. Let's get there and just picture it, because I have friends who are in the restaurant business here, and I see the challenges because the restaurant business is one of the hardest businesses to
Yeah.
have succeed. And you've done it for years, and yet I became aware that there was a possibility. There were times since I have known you when all of a sudden people would come in a way that we are not familiar with, and your restaurant would be shut down by outside authorities without any prior notice. Explain what that is like. What's happening?
Well, they are institution to come to investigate how much money you are making in a day, and if they are closing the cash register, and the pockets of the waiters will be emptied in front of them. You are not allowed to touch anything. So this has to be correct with what you registered and what they have in their pockets.
So
This is scary because they are coming dressed in uniform with police after them. They will be from the fire department, for the economic police, from
And did they do this when somebody reports you, or they
No.
suspect something, or just randomly?
no,
Just
random at midnight maybe
They show up.
they show up.
And that's a pretty totalitarian thing for a country that's supposed to be a democracy here. That sounds more like communism.
Yes, because they are paid by the state, but their salary can increase, but how much fines they will get.
Oh,
So
so there's an
you
incentive
know
for them
you
to
will
find
get a
ex-
fine
Right.
for sure. Now depends. If they find something bad, the fine will be bigger. If they won't find it, they will get the least possible, but you still get a fine. So we are trying to live with that.
So here's what I'm wondering, again, from kind of an American mindset. when we hear about Romania, it's the word corruption is not far from coming next in that, um, and and yet for us, the whole notion of corruption is, it's really become more of in the public discussion more recently than ever before in my lifetime, and yet you're familiar with it just in the sense of um, the notion of bribes in that business process. I know it's something illegal that's not supposed to happen, but yet as I talk to people, they just kind of shook their head and kind of winked like everybody knows bribery is just going on, kind of part of the grease that makes things happen. Explain a little bit that to me, because it sounds to me like some officials are making an awful lot of money
They do.
through bribery rather than through their salaries.
Exactly, for bribery, and they have huge houses and properties, and we know that this cannot be done legally because we know how much we work and how much stress we have for build something, and we are not able to prosper like they do.
So you can see the
It's a
difference for us.
lifestyle
Yeah,
there.
a very different lifestyle, and on the other hand, um, there seems to be kind of, I would say, a happiness that's surprising when you really come to understand what tiny wages people are making, and the level of subsistence of many people. But I want to just practically touch on something and then really get to, I think, some real hope in a lot of this, because reality is um, you live a very nice life, and you have a great family. But as people are listening to this and they've heard Romania, they're just sitting there saying, isn't he going to ask her about Dracula?
That is Count Vlad the Impaler. I
Well,
think
the
it was
impaler is
right.
not our invention. It's Stocker's invention, and the only connection is the name of the ruler that was Vlad Dracu has nothing to do with the impaler. He was the impaler because this is a way to punish the corruption.
He impaled their heads on
Impaler,
stakes, and it was
yes,
such
and
a
show
brutal
to the people.
brutal tale that Bram Stoker played upon it in the name and turned him into the living dead here.
It actually wasn't their heads, so but we won't get
Oh, I didn't know
we,
that.
we,
Okay.
was
we
a
will
head.
not we will not get
He
into the
impaled something
details.
else.
But
Well,
it's,
No, the head.
here's the question I have as I'm listening to all this tale, the last episode and this one. You casually tell us these trying times. You casually lay out the difficulties you face, and yet you persevere, and yet you find ways around it and to prosper and live. And in this show in particular, what role does spirituality play in that for you?
It is having a role. I cannot say big because I'm not a church goer. Like
We're not talking about church now. We're talking
No.
about just other beliefs that keep you going. What keeps you, or what does, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, what keeps you going through? How do you persevere through that?
well, the hope is last to die. So we
Oh,
hope that better times will come, and we are hoping that for our children to be better, and
let
we
me
just live with this hope.
let me take you here, because this is one of the reasons that I thought you would be such a fun guest here. You are a young woman, but many of your friends are retiring and are having more time to travel. And as they make decisions, having grown up in the same culture that you did, as they make decisions about trips, you're starting to run around the world even, but even throughout Romania, they tend to choose what kind of sites and what kind of places. And why do they tease you a little bit when they try to drag you along?
Well, they will choose trips to monasteries that we have a lot, and we find them very interesting and peaceful. That you find there a peace of mind and soul, and it's we like them. And wherever they go, they will invited me too. It was the first time that I went because they will sleep in those monasteries. The priest, not the priests, the monks or the nuns will invite us to the meal that they will prepare there, and we will be able to stay and listen to their morning hours in
And what
church.
attracts you to this? Because you grew up without it. You were taught to be aware of it by grandparents and parents who
Yes.
didn't grow up under communism, but by your own recollection, it didn't mean much. It was just an old tradition, maybe even a superstition that you just went through. Now you've been you're free to do more things than you were under communist rule. Maybe not as much as we have, the complete freedoms we have here, and yet something pulls you back to that.
Well,
Why?
sometimes you'll find a very good monk over there that will have the calling and explain you a lot, and the nuns too. And it's the peaceness that we find there, and actually there are places filled with flowers and interesting buildings where they live and their kind of life. And I don't know why. Maybe it's in our
Is it a longing for something? Is it
for
a
something. Maybe
nostalgia
this
for
is
something?
yes,
Is it
yes.
just history and nostalgia? Is it longing for something that you lack in your own life?
Maybe yes, yes. This is what everybody's going there, and they find
Peace and
peace,
peace,
and
yeah.
they find. So, sometimes you are able to sleep there too.
Let's pick up on just one sentence you said that I don't want to miss, because there really are a few people that are getting the ears in the church in Romania. And you define them in terms of the ones with the real calling. You make a distinction.
Yes.
And they seem to be touching people in a way that the church as a whole, that has largely been dismissed, from what I can tell, by the average person, even though they might go to church for their baptism of the child, or even though they might go for a wedding ceremony. They're not, as you even spoke of, not an active churchgoer in that sense, but still very much feel that you're Christians and that you're part of the Orthodox Church, if you will, whether or not you go. But then there are those people who are connecting, who you say who are called. Just talk a little bit about that, because people really are responding to these priests who are kind of drawn outside the lines a little bit, aren't they?
No, no. I don't know. Maybe their life is in there, and when they have visitors like us, the monks and the nuns are very nice, and they are sharing stories with us of other people, of what their life is there and what they are doing, and we try to think that this is more what a church should do or should have than what we have back home in a regular church.
Because back home, we talked about in the first episode, the state still pays the priests.
Yes.
And then you have to pay, as an ordinary member of the faith, the priest to come out a lot to bless the house for all these different religious ceremonies
Yes.
that are much greater than we have here. You talk about even a death of a loved one. For years, they have to come out and go through services and ceremonies and stuff.
Yeah.
And each time they arrive, they expect to be paid. So they
Yes,
get paid
they
by
do.
the salary. And you said some of these priests, oh my goodness, they're driving Mercedes-Benz and operating independent hotels and whatnot.
Hotels,
So you distinguish between those people, the paid clergy, and those who live a simple monastic life. You see them as true calling, as something different.
Yes, and when we go there, we pay something that is like their prayers for us, that can be for 6 months, a year, or how much you want, and they never ask for money. Like, you pay how much you want.
So they'll pray for you, and they're not asking. They don't have one hand out and the next hand
Yes,
for the
and
prayer.
this
Yeah.
is something that we do with a lot of pleasure. I better go to all those monasteries and give them money. Some people are going there with food suppliers for them to last.
So what's the state of church in Romania? Or what's the state of spirituality, religion, whatever you want to call it, of people? And it sounds like there's two different things.
Yes,
There's an
they're
official
different.
religion, which still survives, and which is part of your ordinary life a little bit. You still, either out of superstition or tradition or fear or longing, participate in a little bit. But it's this other spirituality that you seem to seek. Are you alone? Are you like most people? What? Give us a sense of what Romania looks like today from religion and church.
Well, churches are full on Christmas and Easter, and on those Saturdays and Sundays when we celebrate our deaths. Otherwise, they are kind of empty.
Kind of empty, okay. And how are the people? Are they kind of empty? Are they you experienced when there was no church, now you experience there are churches, but it still isn't, it seems to be a kind of corrupt, empty
place.
Corrupt, empty place. So
Yes,
what
yes.
is it that they fill their lives with? You're reaching for something. You seem to be hungry for something.
We are talking between ourselves, or we just keep it to ourselves, or we go and visit those places that bring us peace, monasteries.
I think there's an and here, Paul.
Yeah, I hope so.
You know, when you have, we say church hurts, and you so easily could think after 50 years of having basically an official atheist state,
Right.
in some senses where the church was outlawed except where they were able to be co-conspirators
Yes.
of suppressing the masses. Reality is that Romanians still have an openness when there's authenticity involved.
Yes.
And even to see many of the people who I met who still, when they went to visit places that had been impacted by the gospel in years past and by different movements within the church in Romania, they were going as people of faith. They weren't going as cynics. And they were touch base in personal conversation, which is ultimately in the church. I don't care if you're in America or if you're in Romania. When it really gets down to the faith that touches your life and your family, it's with those friends. And I am just so glad that you were willing to share some of those friends with me. They had a huge impact in my life when I was hurting. And I am just glad that Church Hurts has an and, even in Romania.
Well, and maybe the end will give us some hope for our own country here. I hope that out of this whole series we come away with some understanding of where is our spirituality, where is our religion going, as people here in this country for different reasons maybe, or maybe the same reasons, go less and less to church. Where do we end up? And we all say, like Winston Churchill said about democracy, hey, democracy is the worst system in the world, unless you compare it to all the others. And what else you got? So I take hope that there is an answer in the authentic relationships and experiences that you're finding. Maybe there's some hope for us to find the same here.
And that is what we're going to leave you with, Teodora, as you go back to Romania. Take our love and our blessings with you. Church Hurts. And
Thank you.
Join us as we explore this subject in further episodes, as we delve deeper into the topic that we all hear too often, church hurts. And right here in Orange County's only community radio station, octalkradio.net.